So what's new with you? All is well? Um, One of the things that Ajahn Chah would say a lot was, you think too much. Very quite simply. And Luang Por Samita would say, don't think about it. So, like if I would ask, or someone would ask a complicated question to Luang Por Chah, he said, Kit Makarmpai, you think too much. So he wouldn't even kind of entertain a complicated thinking process because he realized that it wasn't really a question about suffering. It was more a question of intellect. It could not really, that wasn't the point of it, to have an answer. The point of it was to liberate the mind from attachment. So if that's where the questioner was kind of going to, he just wouldn't go there. And he could be quite kind in that, or quite dismissive, depending on the situation and what he thought the character might like, or would be helpful. So he'd say, Kit mat gurnpai, ya kit, don't think about it. Like I was saying, don't go there. And yet, to try to get rid of thinking, so I asked, one of the first questions I asked him, I was a Samanera at Wapapong, and I asked him after the Patimokkha, we had a kind of Q&A, and I said, how do we get rid of thinking? And he says, thinking's not a problem. So, you think too much, so how do I get rid of thinking? Well, wow. And I think it's a conundrum we all face, don't we? Because it's such a powerful force, thinking, isn't it? And then also, it can be very, like I'm reading a book on India, William Dalrymple's latest book. Boy, is it interesting, about Ashoka and early, and it's so interesting. So, yeah, words can be fabulous, and there is that. But as contemplatives, our highest aspiration is certainly not entertainment. And I think our highest aspiration, what would be the gateway to that highest aspiration? And I was kind of contemplating that in terms of thought. Well, I thought it would be like space or heart. So what is sort of the kind of conclusion I was playing around with, because the metaphors of that I like of foreground, background. Background is conscious space, and that I can touch. That can be known, and that is very liberating. And then the heart and the avenues of compassion, I think, to me it's the kind of method of living in the world, the Brahma Viharas, as we say. That's how you live in the world. So when I cultivate both of those, space and then the heart, then I have a pathway that does not try to get rid of thought and doesn't even make a judgment about thought, but isn't just always embedded in thought. You see what I mean? So in turn, and how does this relate to meditation? Well, if you are embedded in dullness, say, embedded like being asleep. Sorry, you're asleep. You're in the bed of dullness. You're lost in it. Well, you're lost in thought, but there's no energy. So there's a whole thinking process going on, but there isn't enough vitality. So in terms of meditation, so embodying, being more embodied rather than being up in the head, to me seems the way to go. And so we were talking in one of the interviews about how do you do that? Well, I thought we could do that, this meditation. And then if the mind is preoccupied with doubt, that's a whole lot of thinking. It's a whole lot of thinking. And doubt is a necessary part of analysis and such like. But doubt is, as I've been saying, is still a sankhara. It's still an object. The attention is not available for liberation because it is preoccupied with thinking. So the fifth hindrance of meditation in nivarana, doubt, is the capacity to know doubt as an object and be okay to not know and not be caught in a cycle of answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, because that's just a closed loop of endless thinking. So doubt is one of the hindrances, and it seems to me the more embodied I can be and learn how to go from the pressures of head thinking down to the heart or somewhere in the body, breath or whatever, that's going to help that one. Aversion, another of the hindrances, dosa, and that that resistance to whatever, resistance to my own discomforts or resistance to thinking, trying to get rid of it. Self-righteousness, it's not fair, it goes on and on and on. Somehow I have to, as a contemplative, I have to objectify those things and see them in a more broad way. Say, well, this is aversion. Aversion feels this way. If I'm just fascinated by something, lobha, different kinds of things which are consuming my mind in meditation, fantasies or beautiful images or whatever, that's still, the mind is still preoccupied, it's attached, it's not free. How can I get some space? Seems to me either space or bodily meditation. So these two, for me, are pretty primary. I mean, they are, for me, the way to do it. And so, like, awareness as space and openness is an abiding. So that's, as Ajahn Chah might refer to that, our real home. And then the heart is the way to kind of live in home, like how do you function in this world. And if in any ways in meditation I can cultivate a sense of space or a sense of heart, that's going to be very, very fruitful in ordinary life and will give me access to the mind which is free from attachment. I did a guided by the way, on Sundays now at the monastery, every Sunday morning at 9:30 we have a public meditation. If you're in the area, please come. I think next year it'll be really cool with a big hall. But I just did a meditation on the heart chakra, and there was a meditator there whose tendency was to really focus very hard. That was a kind of the tendency this person had in meditation, and she could follow the instruction, but then she got so tense because she was trying to see the heart. And then I said, no, you go to space. And that she had been doing, actually, because she had seen that was much better. So even though the instruction to me in my own, because when I give instruction, I do it myself, right? So when I'm giving the instruction, I'm feeling quite relaxed. Well, this works, right? I'm having no problem. But this other person is, got to get to the heart. I've got to cultivate love. And, that's good for me to hear as a teacher, isn't it? Like, oh, yeah. So the instruction that anyone gives is relative to their own experience. But so if we think about the nivarana of dullness, and I've said this oftentimes in retreats, just to repeat. When I had about a year of dullness, which I had to work with. Now it comes and goes according to the rhythms of the body and mind, but at that period it was definitely a nivarana in the sense that it was some form of lack of awareness, say. And then I developed a very vigorous way of putting a lot of energy into my consciousness, and those of you who've done retreats with me, I set up a strong posture. I put a lot of emphasis on the verticality of the posture. I open my shoulders. I get really grounded, and then it's much easier sitting cross-legged. But I start to do deep breathing, and really deep breathing. Really, this is a very coarse meditation. It's not like refined. Like if you do anapanasati, you can get the mind really beautifully refined, right? But people who fall asleep, you don't want that because you're not refined. You're asleep. So there's a difference. So what I learned to do was then I'd go to really, really deep breathing. And then I'd use some of the ideas of pranayama, remember Ujjayi pranayama, but long breath in and then make the out breath the same length as the in breath, and then slow it all down. So it's quite deliberate, and quite long-winded in that way. And then after I got the breath really long, even then sometimes I could feel the sleepiness, because the mind, it's just kind of a laziness. So even though the breath was, the mind, the kind of nivarana wanted to just say, no, you don't need to do that. Come on, relax. And then I had to keep with a long breath. And then I learned to push my hara forward. And then people told me that's bad for your back. I said, fine. I pushed my hara forward, and that's not how you do yoga, okay. And then I would just push my coccyx down and pull my head up. So it was like an extreme extension, and the way I do that would be on 10 long out breaths, I'd push upwards, feeling the chest and the neck and top of the head like something's pulling me up to the ceiling. On 10 long out breaths, I do that. Then at the out breath, and then 10 out breaths, I would do the opposite. Push down into the ground, push my hara out and down. And then I would get that sense of extension. And I do that for a while. Then I would relax the posture, but try to keep it straight. And then I was in the ball game, as it were. Now I could watch the arising of dullness, because I knew I wasn't seeing the arising of dullness. If you don't see the arising of dullness, you become dull. You fall asleep. So it's the arising which was very difficult to actually notice. I knew that I needed some energy, and this is, I think, what we mean by samadhi. You get enough energy and a kind of good strong platform from which you can see the nivaranas operating. So then I'd lose it again. And wow, this is really difficult. And then I start up again. Obviously, I was also using the eyes open, but the energy of the posture was even more powerful than the eyes open. The eyes open is a very good way to do it. So then, after a while, kind of figuring this out, then I could see. I'd have much more awareness when that first bobbing began. The FBB. This kind of, and that's what's happening, isn't it? Like the posture's collapsing, and the arms are going on the thighs, and the thinking mind. What's going on in the thinking mind? It's diluted. It's just whatever. It's gaga, and it'll probably be trying to persuade you that you've done enough. Just relax. In a kind of, like a lazy person's way, I don't really need to get out of bed. I mean, I meditated yesterday. I think that's sort of, anyway, the message is wrong. So it's the physicality, trusting in that. And then as I began to see that, then I knew, okay, now push your hara forward and open up your chest. And push it forward, open up your chest. Get that spine straight. And then I do that. And then I'm in the game again. And it comes, okay. So sometimes I would have to do it for 10 minutes. Sometimes it would be a long hour. A very long hour. Oh, gosh, okay. And until I think, and then the panya, or the sati sampajanya of this being, kind of had a visceral understanding and a kind of an intellectual understanding of what to do. So when it came up, then I exactly knew what to do, and that became quite effective. So I thought, because several people have said that their minds are cloudy and so on, I'll walk through that with you, push through that with you, breathe through that with you. But if you're finding it a bit over the top, just put on your headset and listen to ABBA, whatever you want. And obviously, this kind of a technique might just be like totally unnecessary, totally over the top. So if you're feeling restless, and you don't identify restlessness, you tend to try harder. But actually, you got lots of energy because you know what's going on, and what's going on is too long. I want to get out of here. When is it going to end? What? It's only 10 minutes. Go on. You're joking. And that's obviously restlessness. That's a whole different ballgame. So then, what do? Well, then you have to just kind of be a sack of potatoes. Nothing to do. Just relax. Kind of really relax. But you can kind of mistake the two, can't you? Think, well, I'm really relaxed. So what's going on? Restlessness comes about through bodily pain, discomfort. So if you don't identify that, you're feeling discomfort, and you keep trying to become comfortable, that'll make you restless. If you just are kind of blindly willful and push through pain, I think most of us are too old for that now. Many of us, when we were young, we would push through pain, but I realized that I wasn't, when I was, kind of in that mode as a kind of strident young monk. There was no wisdom in it. There was just willfulness. I have to just sit through this pain. And so what? At the end of it, I just had bad knees, or maybe kind of an inflated ego sense. Okay, I sat through, but it wasn't really wisdom to see what's the desire here. The desire is not to have pain. And so with discomfort as condition, there is desire. Obviously, that's physical. But if I can understand the body, and I can say, well, how bad is this discomfort? Well, I'll check it out. Discomfort feels this way. Then I'm aware. And then I think quite naturally you'll move when you have to move. But it won't be kind of a willfulness. But certainly pain and discomfort will produce the looking at the clock. If you're starting to discomfort, you look at the clock and say, should I move? Should I not move? This hurts. And that's just restlessness. So you can look at the clock but say, oh yeah, discomfort feels this way. And see if you can just settle in with discomfort. Like really into the place of discomfort and see what happens. Sometimes it relaxes. Sometimes you have to move. Okay, so why don't we do that? Why don't we try that kind of breathing meditation for adults?